if you set something in the 80s, you have to acknowledge that the 80s are happening. And I felt it did that very well without getting overly political. Hi, it's Ricarda, aka the .303 bookworm, and today I'm talking about a book that I unfortunately don't have in my hands, which is Murder Before Evensong by the Reverend Richard Coles. It just came out as a 5-part television series last month in October 2025, and I watched it and I really enjoyed it, and I thought, hang on, I read the book. I don't remember liking the book at all. So I looked back on my Goodreads and found out I rated it 3 stars. So obviously I thought, well, maybe I was a bit harsh on it or something. And I went and listened to the audiobook again. It's read by the author. And I have to say, I still don't like the book very much. Now, if you like cozy mysteries, it's fine. It's fine. There's bones of a good story. There's bones of some interesting characters. You get very much a feeling that the author obviously knows what he's talking about in terms of parish councils and all that. So in case you don't know who the Reverend Richard Coles is, he was a pop star, was kind of a one-hit wonder with Don't Leave Me This Way, as a member of the Communards together with Jimmy Somerville back in the 80s. He has said that he was the inspiration for the character of in Bridget Jones's Diary. He was the guy who had exactly one hit, and he's been getting laid off that ever since. Jimmy Somerville then went solo and had a more successful career, while Richard Coles went to university, read theology, and in 2001 actually became a vicar in the Church of England, which is a position he held until 2022 when he retired as a vicar, because he said he couldn't be there for his parishioners the way he wanted to be, because he also had a lot of media engagements. You may have seen him if you are into British panel shows. You may have seen him in QI, Have I Got News For You, a bunch of other shows. He's someone who I, in principle, have a lot of time for. I've always enjoyed his appearances. He's an interesting person. He got into religion partially because of the experiences he had in the 1980s, which is he is gay, and a lot of his friends died during the AIDS epidemic, including one really notable AIDS activist. And that drove him in the direction of religion, which is kind of ironic because the churches were generally not very good about the way they dealt with the AIDS epidemic, and particularly with gay people dying of it, at least initially, and some of them still not. So I always found that very interesting. And that's why when you read the book, when I read Murder Before Evensong, I just thought it was rather anodyne. I just didn't, I mean, yes, there's okay, so you have a mystery story. Essentially, he's, you have Daniel Clement, who's a rector, who's the vicar of this small parish church, and the biggest thing that's going on in his life is his mum's living with him. He has 2 dogs, and he is trying to put a toilet in at the church, and there's tremendous upheaval about this because how dare he. Then the flower arranging committee wants to put in a buttery, which has to be explained to him, which is apparently some sort of, I don't know, butler's pantry, I don't know. Never, I have to perfectly honest, never heard of buttery before in my life. But And this leads to sort of an internal war, and then somebody gets killed. As mysteries go, it's only so-so. I personally thought the motivation was somewhat weak. I thought the parish council stuff was interesting. I liked the fact of how he's not, he's not Father Brown. He's just wandering around and he just finds stuff out because he's the vicar. That's his job, listening to people. He's not this mental giant. But it just, there wasn't anything special about it. So while I can only recommend this book to people who really like their cozy murder mysteries, and I know there's many people who do, personally it's not my favorite genre. I will read it, but I try to only read the really good ones and sort of the middling ones. It's just not me. But I understand that a lot of people like it and that it's like a warm hug. But yeah, it's just on the whole not my favorite thing. So when I watched the adaptation of it, I was just, oh yeah, that's going to be fun. It has Matthew Lewis, whom you may know as Neville Longbottom from Harry Potter, playing Daniel Clement. They have two very lovely Dachshund actors playing the dogs. His mother only just moves in. There's some characters taken out. There's some other characters added in. And it is, the book is set in 1988, as is the TV adaptation. But while I think the subject of AIDS is mentioned once in the book, it is a huge part of what happens in the TV adaptation. Closeted homosexuality is a big deal. Activism is a big deal. Being the vicar of a very conservative village, also a village that is very much rooted in the history of World War II, that's all there. And that, I think, it was sort of touched upon in the book, and it does have a bearing on the mystery in the book, but it is much more there in the TV adaptation. Now, some people complained that the writing wasn't very good, which I personally liked the writing just fine. Or that Matthew Lewis was wooden. I got the impression more that the character is awkward, therefore the portrayal is awkward, but I liked it. I liked him. He wasn't an overbearing character, but you get this feeling of this is someone who's a vicar whose job is to listen and who notices the small details. There's some lovely comic moments. I liked the supporting cast. I liked the sense of time and place. Small things like not just what's on TV, but just like the clothes shop. And this not over the top 80s clothes, but this really very much what middle-aged middle-class women would be wearing. I like that. There was a lot more body to the characters, including the killer. I thought the killer's motivation, which the same killer in the book and the adaptation, but I thought that the motivation made more sense. And I liked the TV adaptation a lot better. It was still cozy. I mean, somebody said, oh, it's edgier and it's faster. I was like, if you set something in the 80s, you have to acknowledge that the 80s are happening. And I felt it did that very well without getting overly political. For me, I thought that there was a lot more depth to characters, to the plot, to everything. I don't know how involved the Reverend Coles was. He has spoken about this. Like, it's very important to know it's merely inspired by the novel. But it is much more clear in the TV adaptation that you're looking at a person who's essentially him. You still have the parish council politics, which, you know, always a bit of fun, Vicar of Dibley style thing. I've never been on a parish council in my life, but I've heard about some major parish council drama, and I know that can be amusing for the outsiders and terribly serious for those involved. Like I said, I thought that there was more depth to the characters. There was a certain warmth to some of the characters that I really enjoyed. I have only read the first of the books, and I was looking it up how people felt, and somebody on Reddit said, oh, well, just read the first one, it gets worse afterwards. And I was like, I mean, I wasn't that fond of the first one, so I'm probably going to skip that unless I find myself not having anything else to read. And even with relatively sort of cozy mystery, if that's what I'm in the mood for, it's not that great. I mean, it's like I said, it is completely fine. But if you weren't going to read it anyway, I don't recommend it. I just don't think it's worth the time. However, if you have, you know, time in your evening to watch a 5-part mini-series, you could do worse than Murder Before Evensong. Like I said, I enjoyed it. It's not like this brilliant thing or anything. It's just lovely. It is very much sort of a cozy mystery. And being that, I felt it just is more effective than the book was. I'm actually rewatching it now because, of course, I'm watching it now and thinking, oh, this was different in the book, this was different in the book. I would really love to hear if anyone else has read it or watched it, and if you have done both, which do you prefer? Because, like I said, I do love to talk about books, and even books that I didn't like that much. Like I said, it's also a pity because I really like the Reverend Richard Coles. I just wish he'd written a better book in this instance. So I wish you all a lovely evening. Keep reading, and please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again very, very soon. Bye.